My cucumber plants have been going gangbusters and I get so many cucumbers off them, and I have for quite a while now, and there's only so much Greek salad or cucumber and mint water that I can put together. So I recently started pickling them and I was really happy with the results. So today I'm going to show you how to do fresh pickled cucumbers. They're slightly different to long-term stored pickled cucumbers. One of the benefits is that you don't need proper preserving jars. You can use any glass jars that you already have at home. You just need to sterilize them properly, which we'll go through today. And the other benefit is you don't have to use pickling cucumbers. So if you've planted cucumbers that are suitable to use in fresh salads because they're versatile and easy to use, you can still use any of those excess cucumbers that you have to pickle and eat them in the next few days, and they're really delicious. So we'll have a look in the cucumber vines. I harvested from here only about 2 weeks ago and I took off everything that I could see, so it'll be quite interesting going through and showing you what is already starting to come back. I did spy a couple that we can use, and I'm also going to harvest some of our onions because using these salad onions in the pickle mixture is also really yummy. And here we have our cucumber vine with a baby cucumber with the flower on top. Here's a slightly bigger one that I'll leave on the vine for today. There are quite a few flowers scattered throughout. I also have my cucumbers up on hooks. Here's another little baby one that's coming through. Might be something down in there. And another one over here. So you can see they really are very prolific. Having them up on hooks helps with space. Here's a little grasshopper that I found. He's pretty cute, sitting there up on some basil. I have a bit of a bare patch where there was originally some productive vines that then just sort of died down that I cut back. Here's a good cucumber for us to take today. That's quite a nice size for the tiny jars I have, and here is another really good one right there. So you can see they really produce a lot. I'll show you the salad onions. I multi-sow these, so that's why they look like they're in clumps. And these should be early white Spanish. And we'll go back inside and start sterilizing. The pickles that I'm making today are for fresh use, so they're not for long-term preservation, and that means that we can use different jars. We don't need preserving jars, which have a secure lid on them. We can use any jars that we have at home. However, we do have to be really careful and make sure that we sterilize them properly. So the first thing that we're going to do to sterilize these jars is put them in the dishwasher, and we're going to boil the lids. After we do that, we're going to put them in the oven at 120 degrees to 140 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes or until they're dry. So here we have our jar lids boiling away to sterilize them. Just to be clear, we don't have to put the jar lids in the oven, just the jars themselves. So I'm just going to carefully take them out and put them in this clean dish to set aside for when we're going to use them. Now let's go through the ingredients. Firstly, you're going to want a reasonably nice vinegar. I'm using an Australian apple cider vinegar. You can use rice wine vinegar or white vinegar. I'd pick a nice one. You're going to need caster sugar and salt. You're going to, if you're using the same vegetables, you're going to need the salad onions like I have. These have been multi-sown, so they're stuck together. And you're going to want different herbs. I'm using dill. I love dill. I'm using 2 different types of parsley, flat leaf and curly. I'm also going to use some basil from the garden, some chives, and the main ingredient, the cucumber. And now let's start making it and go through quantities. We are going to want to use 1 cup of our vinegar. We'll get that. And like I said, you can use any type of vinegar. For pickling, we're going to want 1/2 cup of water, just normal tap water. We're going to want a teaspoon of sugar or thereabouts. Some recipes use less. You could also use a sugar substitute like honey if you can't have sugar or don't want to have sugar. I'm going to use an equal amount of salt, so a teaspoon of salt. I've got sea salt, but it doesn't have to be sea salt, just any salt. Turn that on and get that going because we're going to want to have it boiling before we add our herbs. This amount of pickling liquid was pretty much perfect for the 5 tiny jars that I have. So if you're planning on filling up some bigger jars, you're going to want to, at the very least, double and possibly triple or quadruple this recipe. So you do end up going through quite a bit of vinegar. We've got all our herbs here. All of these herbs are not going to be used in making the pickling liquid. Some are going to go in, probably the basil and chives, a portion of them, a small amount of them, once this is boiled. And then other herbs will just go into the jars for the cucumbers to pickle in with them, mainly the dill and probably the parsley. I'll visually speed through this next bit because it takes a while for the pickling liquid to come to the boil, and I don't like adding the herbs until the liquid itself has almost reached boiling point and is at least simmering. It's just a personal preference. I'm sure it wouldn't make a difference if you put it in at the start and let it rest in there while the liquid was coming to the boil. But now that it's starting to simmer, I've put in basil, and I put maybe 5 or 6 leaves, like a little sprig almost of basil, and about a tablespoon of chives into this pickling liquid. Other herbs are going to go into the jars themselves, as I mentioned earlier, particularly the dill and the parsley. So this is pretty much boiling now, getting pretty good. I'm just going to let it boil for a few seconds and then take it off the heat, and I'm going to put it up the back and rest it. And the reason why I'm letting it cool down is because adding it into the jars with the pickles and onions while it's cool will help my cucumbers stay nice and crispy. So because we had all those herbs, I'm just going to strain it out. I don't want these blanched herbs in the jar. I have some fresh herbs in the jar, and I'm very carefully going to pour it into the jar so that it covers all of the cucumber and onion and herbs that I have in there. I've kind of layered the cucumber and onion more for visual effect than anything else. These jars are really tiny. I unfortunately didn't have any big glass jars lying around to make a big one. However, I think this might be quite handy when I'm going to have my lunches and I can just pull out some pickles to have with ham. So there you go, guys, the completed 5 bottles. The amount of liquid I made with the recipe was perfect for filling up these 5 jars, but as you can see, they're quite tiny. So again, if you're going to make a big jar, you will have to increase the recipe size. And don't forget that you can use all different types of vinegars. I used apple cider vinegar today. The last time I made it, I used a nice rice wine vinegar. You can use white vinegar. My only comment on that is I think it's best to pick a nicer vinegar, because when you eat pickles, as you know, you do end up with a bit of that pickling juice with the pickle. So the nicer your pickling liquid is, I imagine the better it will taste. And just to wrap up, don't forget that you do have to be really careful when sterilizing your pickling jars. The method we used today was just for eating fresh pickles, so pickles that I'll eat over the next 3 to 5 days. In terms of when you eat them, you can eat them as soon as the following day, or if you've made them in the morning, you could even start eating them that night. They can be eaten really quickly. However, if you leave them sort of 3 days, the flavors will really mature and develop. I am planning on doing a video on preserving pickles for long-term storage, using proper preserving jars and boiling the jars. So if you'd like to see me do that, just subscribe and hit the notification bell and you'll know when that video has gone up. I'm also going to do a video on using excess cucumbers to make tzatziki, which is a delicious dip and something else that's a bit more inventive that can be done with cucumbers, particularly when you have an excess of them at any point in the season. If you have any questions about what I've done today, just leave the question in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer. Or if you have any tips for everyone making pickles at home, feel free to add those too. I'm definitely not a super experienced pickle maker, so I'd love any tips that people have. Thank you for watching. Bye!